I found my wife's wedding ring in her car that Tuesday morning. After 23 years of marriage, she had never taken it off, not once. Yet there it was, sitting in the cup holder like a piece of loose change. I'm a locksmith. I can tell when something is out of place. My name's Kevin Barnes. I'm 49, and I've been in the locksmith trade for over 2 decades. I started with nothing but a beat-up van, running emergency calls at all hours. Now, I own Barnes Security Solutions, the most trusted locksmith service across 3 counties. People call me when they're locked out of their cars at 2 a.m., when they misplace their house keys, or when they want their entire security system upgraded. I've built my name on being dependable, honest, and showing up when folks need me the most. My wife, Ashley, is 45 and works as a dental hygienist downtown. We met at a community barbecue back in 2001. We clicked over bad potato salad and warm beer. She had this laugh that could light up any room, and she didn't hesitate to roll up her sleeves and help clean up afterward. That was the kind of woman she was, or at least the woman I believe she was. Our son, Mason, just turned 22. He graduated from college last spring with a degree in computer science. Smart kid, level-headed. He's working at a tech startup in Denver now. When he was little, Ashley and I used to joke that we were the perfect pair. I could open any locked door, and she could fix any broken smile. The morning everything changed started out like any other Tuesday. I was in the garage, organizing my tools for the day when my phone buzzed. Emergency lockout at Riverside Shopping Center. Nothing out of the ordinary. But when I grabbed my keys from the hook by the door, I noticed Ashley's car was still in the driveway. She'd supposedly left for work an hour earlier. Her purse was gone. Her coffee mug was in the sink. She'd kissed me goodbye like always, but her silver Honda sat exactly where she'd parked it the night before. I walked over and tried the handle. It was unlocked. That was odd. Ashley was obsessive about locking her car, ever since someone had broken into her friends at the mall. I leaned inside, thinking maybe she'd rushed back into the house and forgotten something important. That's when I saw it, her wedding ring. Sitting in the cup holder like that was its home, not on the dashboard like it had slipped off, not tucked away in the console for safekeeping, right there, out in the open, as if she had taken it off on purpose and laid it there. I picked it up and rolled it in my palm. Inside, the engraving was still clear. Forever yours, K.N.A. 2001. I'd spent months saving for that ring. She'd worn it every single day for more than 20 years. Ashley didn't remove her jewelry, ever. She even kept it on in the shower. She always said it felt wrong not to. Standing there in the driveway, holding my wife's wedding ring, while her empty car sat in front of our house, something shifted inside me. It wasn't anger yet, more like a cold, creeping sense that something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. I slipped the ring into my pocket and went back inside. Ashley would be home around 6, like always, and I wanted to see how she'd handle my questions. The emergency call could wait 5 minutes. This mattered more. That evening, when Ashley walked through the front door, she looked completely normal, hair still neat from work, that familiar smile appearing when she saw me at the kitchen table. She dropped her purse by the door and went straight to the fridge. "How was your day?" she asked, pulling out ingredients for dinner. "Good. Had that lockout at Riverside. Then Mrs. Peterson needed her deadbolts changed." I kept my voice casual, but I was watching her hands. No wedding ring. "Hey, quick question," I said. "I moved your car this morning and found something interesting." Ashley froze for half a second, her hand halfway to the cabinet. Most people would have missed it. I didn't. "Oh," she said, turning around with a bright smile that looked just a bit too bright. "What kind of interesting?" I took the ring from my pocket and placed it on the counter between us. "Want to tell me why this was sitting in your cup holder?" For a heartbeat, Ashley's face went blank. Then she laughed, but it sounded forced, like she was reading from a script. "Oh my God, I'm such an airhead," she said, reaching for the ring. "I took it off at the gym yesterday. You know how I hate the soap buildup under it when I wash my hands? I must have forgotten to put it back on." She slid the ring back onto her finger like nothing was wrong, but the whole act felt off. "Which gym?" I asked. "Thought you were going to that new place on Oak Street now, right?" "Yeah, Oak Street Fitness," she answered quickly. "They've got those really harsh antibacterial dispensers everywhere. My skin gets so dry from them." I nodded like I bought it, but my brain was already turning. Ashley had been going to the women-only gym on Riverside Drive for 3 years. She'd never said a word about any gym on Oak Street. I drove through that part of town all the time for work. There was no gym there. Well, glad you didn't lose it, I said, standing up. I'm gonna grab a beer. You want anything? Just water, thanks. As I walked to the fridge, I caught her reflection in the microwave door. She was staring at her hand, twisting the ring like she was testing whether it still fit. When she realized I could see her, she quickly turned back to chopping vegetables. That night, I lay awake long after Ashley drifted off beside me. In 23 years of marriage, I had never known her to lie about something so small. The gym story didn't line up, and her reaction when I asked about it felt rehearsed. I make a living understanding how things are put together, how they fail, and how to fix them. But lying there in the dark, listening to my wife breathe, I had the sinking feeling that I was facing something no tool in my kit could unlock. The next morning, I made a decision that went against everything I thought I believed about marriage. I called my old friend Rick Martinez, a guy I'd known since high school, who now ran a private investigation firm downtown. "Rick, it's Kevin Barnes," I said when he picked up. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to keep it between us." "Shoot," Rick said. I could hear papers rustling in the background. If someone wanted to track their spouse's movements, hypothetically, what would be the most reliable way to do it? There was a pause on the line. "Kevin," he said slowly, "you okay, man?" "Just answer the question," I said. "Rickside GPS tracker," he replied. "Magnetic mount, about 2 weeks of battery, real-time updates straight to your phone. But if you're asking what I think you're asking, how much?" I cut in. "200 for the unit, another 50 for the app setup. But listen, Kevin, I'll be there in an hour. We can..." I ended the call before he could launch into the lecture I knew was coming. I'd been in the security game long enough to know one thing. When something feels wrong, you don't ignore it. You investigate it. And every instinct I had was screaming that Ashley was hiding something big. Rick's office was in a strip mall, wedged between a tax prep joint and a dry cleaner. When I walked in, he was already at his desk with a small black box sitting in front of him. "Before I hand this over," Rick said, resting a hand on the box, "you need to understand what you're stepping into. Once you go down this road, there's no turning back." "I'm already on that road," I replied. "I just need to see where it ends." He opened the box and showed me a device about the size of a matchbook. "Magnets attach it to the underside of the car," he explained. "It pings every 5 minutes. App shows you location and battery level. If she's going somewhere she shouldn't, you'll see it. If she's not, then you owe your wife an apology, and me a beer." I paid cash, slipped the tracker into my jacket pocket, and drove home. Ashley's car was gone. She'd left for work about an hour earlier. I slid under her Honda in the driveway, found a clean piece of the frame, and snapped the tracker into place. Took me less than half a minute. That evening, Ashley came home right on schedule, chatting about her day like nothing in our world had shifted. When she went to shower, I pulled out my phone and opened the tracking app. A little blue dot marked her car, sitting on the map in our neighborhood. "Tomorrow," I muttered. "Tomorrow we'll see how honest you really are." Thursday morning dawned clear, and my stomach was in knots. Ashley left for work at 7:30 on the dot, same as always. She kissed my cheek, picked up her travel mug, and paused at the door. "Might be late again," she said. "Dr. Reynolds has 3 root canals back-to-back today. Those always run over." "No problem," I answered. "I'll grab something for myself." As soon as her car turned off our street, I opened the app. The blue dot moved through town along the usual route, down Maple, left on Harrison, toward downtown and the dental office. For a second, I wondered if I'd been wrong about everything. Then the dot stopped. Not at the dental office, at Murphy's Diner, 3 blocks away. I grabbed my keys and left. Murphy's is a no-frills local joint. Bottomless coffee, cracked vinyl booths, regulars who stay for hours. I parked across the street where I had a clear view of the front door. Ashley's Honda was already in the lot, but she wasn't inside grabbing a quick-to-go coffee. I waited. 10 minutes, 15, 20, then she came out. She wasn't alone. The man beside her was tall, maybe 6'1", with graying hair and a tailored suit that screamed money. His hand rested on the small of her back as they walked across the parking lot. When they stopped by her Honda, he leaned in and kissed her, not a friendly peck, a full, intimate kiss, the kind you reserve for your partner. My fingers dug into the steering wheel. 23 years of marriage, and I was sitting there watching my wife kiss another man in broad daylight. They talked for another minute, then split off to their cars. Ashley headed toward the dental office. The guy drove off in the opposite direction. I committed his license plate to memory automatically. Security habits you never lose. I followed Ashley to her office and watched her go inside like it was any other workday. She checked her reflection in the glass door, smoothed her hair, adjusted her lipstick, and vanished into the building. The tracker showed her car stayed parked there the rest of the day. But now I knew the truth. My wife was cheating on me. So comfortable with it, she was meeting her lover in public in our own town. That evening, Ashley walked through the front door around 6, right on schedule. "How was work?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Exhausting," she sighed, dropping into her favorite chair. "Dr. Reynolds had us slammed. I barely had time to eat lunch." Another lie. I'd watched her linger over what looked like a very leisurely breakfast with her boyfriend. "That sounds rough," I said. "Maybe this weekend we should do something relaxing, just us." She smiled, but it stopped short of her eyes. "That sounds nice, honey." I nodded and headed for the garage. I had planning to do. Over the next 2 weeks, I turned into my own best investigator. I logged everything. Every time Ashley said she was working late. Every detour her car took. Every stop that didn't match her stories. The GPS tracker became my most important tool, feeding me a version of her life she never meant me to see. By Tuesday afternoon, I knew it was time to move to the next step. I called Sarah Morrison, widely known as the best divorce attorney in the county. She had a reputation for being tough, precise, and fiercely protective of her clients' assets. "Mr. Barnes," she said when I sat down in her office, "Rick Martinez called and gave me a brief overview of your situation. What can I do for you?" I passed her a manila folder packed with everything I'd gathered, photos of Ashley and her boyfriend at Murphy's, GPS logs from the app, printed screenshots with dates and times, proof of every lie she'd told about late nights at the office. Sarah went through it slowly, page by page, sometimes nodding, sometimes making small notes. "This is thorough," she said at last. "Your wife has been sloppy, and you've been meticulous. How do you want to move forward?" "I want to protect myself financially," I said. "The business, the house, my retirement. I built Barnes Security Solutions from scratch. I'm not losing it because she decided our marriage was disposable." Sarah outlined the process, how to secure assets, what filing would look like, what to expect in negotiations. Then she explained how to legally move money without raising any red flags. "The key is preparation," she said. "We document everything, get your assets positioned safely, and when you're ready to file, we'll already have every piece we need." Later that day, I went to First National Bank across town, far from our usual branch, and opened a new checking account in my name. From our joint savings, I transferred exactly half. Perfectly legal, since both our names were on the original account. It was the first concrete step toward protecting myself from the fallout I knew was coming. I also pulled my name off several recurring bills and made copies of all our financial records. Over the next week, I quietly started moving my personal things out. Nothing obvious, nothing that would jump out at her. Just what actually meant something to me. My father's tools. Photo albums from before Ashley and I ever met. My collection of vintage lock mechanisms. I rented a storage unit on the other side of town and moved everything in small trips. Ashley was too wrapped up in her affair to notice. Every night she came home with some new story about difficult patients, broken equipment, or last-minute emergencies at the office. Every lie made my choice easier. That Friday evening, I added one last piece to my evidence file. I'd followed Ashley to a different place this time, the downtown Marriott. She met the same man in the lobby, and together they took the elevator up to the 15th floor. I snapped photos through the lobby window, their hands touching, their bodies close as they walked toward the elevators. The timestamp on my camera read 6:47 p.m. At 7:15, Ashley texted me. "Still at the office? Dr. Reynolds is dealing with an emergency patient. Don't wait up." That night, I went through everything one more time. The photos, the GPS logs, our financial documents, a detailed timeline of every lie and every secret meeting. I had enough evidence to destroy her credibility in court, and I'd secured everything that mattered to me. It was time for the last phase of my plan. Monday morning came with that crisp fall air that usually made me feel lucky just to be breathing. But that day, it felt less like a fresh start and more like a final chapter. Ashley hummed in the kitchen as she made her coffee, following the same routine she'd had for 23 years. "Big day ahead," she announced, eyes still glued to her phone. "Dr. Reynolds scheduled back-to-back root canals. You know how those patients get." "Sounds rough," I said, watching her thumbs fly over the screen, probably texting her boyfriend about their next rendezvous. She kissed my cheek, the same mechanical little peck she'd been giving me for months, and headed toward the door. "Don't wait up if I'm late," she called. "This might be another long one." "Take your time," I replied, knowing it was the last conversation we'd ever have as husband and wife. I waited exactly 30 minutes after her car disappeared before I got to work. I'd been planning this moment for weeks, and every part of it was deliberate. I took the manila envelope I'd prepared and placed it on Ashley's pillow. Inside were the divorce papers Sarah had drafted, already signed and notarized. On top of the documents, I laid a photograph Rick had taken of Ashley and her lover kissing outside the Marriott. Their faces were clear. Their body language said everything. Next to the envelope, I set down my wedding ring. 23 years of marriage, reduced to a simple gold band resting on clean white pillowcases. Finally, I left a handwritten note on hotel stationery I'd picked up during one of my surveillance runs. When she came home, I would be gone. All that would be waiting for her was an envelope, a photo, and my ring. "Don't look for me." I walked through the house one last time, not because I was sentimental, but to make sure I hadn't left anything I still needed. The family photos on the mantel stayed. They belonged to a life that no longer existed. The furniture, the decor, all the accumulated stuff from 2 decades together, it all felt like props from someone else's marriage. I loaded the last of my tools into my truck and drove to the apartment I'd been setting up over the past 3 weeks. It wasn't fancy, just a 1-bedroom above Martinez Electronics, but it was mine, paid for with money Ashley didn't know about. The final step was my phone. I took out the SIM card, snapped it in half, and tossed it into a dumpster behind the building. No SIM meant no calls, no texts, no way for Ashley to reach me, no chance for her to twist things or beg or try to talk her way out of what she'd done. At 6:30 p.m., my old life officially ended. Ashley would walk into our bedroom, see the proof of her affair laid out on her pillow, and understand that her husband had walked away without giving her a chance to explain or apologize. I cracked open a beer and sat by the window in my new place, watching the sun sink over the town, where Ashley Barnes would now have to face the fallout of her choices alone. For the first time in months, I felt like I could actually breathe. I didn't have to wait long to see the impact of my disappearance. Rick called the next evening on the cheap burner phone I'd given him for emergencies. "Kevin, what the hell did you do?" he blurted as soon as I picked up. "Ashley showed up at my office this morning, looking like she'd seen a ghost. She was in tears, asking if I knew where you were." "What did you tell her?" I asked, leaning back in the chair by the window. "That I haven't heard from you in weeks, but man, she was frantic. Said she found some papers and photos on your bed and you just vanished. She tried to hire me to track you down." I laughed under my breath. "I bet she did. So, what did you say?" I told her I don't take cases involving friends, and that maybe she should think about why her husband felt the need to disappear in the first place. Good old Rick. He understood loyalty. "She's been calling your office too," he added. "Martinez Electronics said you resigned effective immediately. No forwarding address, no contact info. Kevin, you really cut every line, didn't you?" "That was the idea," I said. "Clean break, no breadcrumbs." 3 days later, my son Mason called the burner. His voice was tight, confused, strained. "Dad, what's going on?" he asked. "Mom called me crying, saying you left divorce papers and just disappeared. She's talking about hiring lawyers, private investigators. She sounds completely terrified. Can we meet? Just us? There's clearly something I'm not being told." We agreed to meet at a Denny's off the interstate, about 20 minutes from our old neighborhood. When I walked in, Mason was already in a corner booth, looking like he'd aged 5 years in a week. "Dad," he said as I sat down, "Mom says you're having some kind of breakdown. She says she found papers and photos that don't make sense, and that you left without explaining anything." I set a manila folder on the table between us. "Your mother's been having an affair for months," I said quietly. "These are the photos and the evidence I collected before I left." Mason stared at the folder like it might detonate if he touched it. Slowly, he opened the folder and looked at the first photo. Ashley and her lover kissing outside the Marriott Hotel. His face shifted through a whole range of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and finally a slow, simmering anger. "How long?" Mason asked quietly. "At least 4 months that I can prove," I said. "Probably longer." Mason flipped through the rest of the evidence: GPS logs, hotel receipts, more photos. When he was done, he leaned back in the booth and rubbed his face with both hands. "I can't believe she did this," Mason said at last. 23 years, and she threw it all away for some random guy. "His name is Dr. Richard Lawson," I replied. "Cardiologist at St. Mary's Hospital, married with 2 kids. Mason's head snapped up. "She's sleeping with a married man?" "Apparently." We sat in silence for a moment before Mason spoke again. "So, what happens now?" "Now you decide what kind of relationship you want with your mother," I said. "I'm not going to push you either way, but you deserve to know the truth." Mason nodded slowly. "Can I keep these copies?" "They're yours," I said. Driving back to my apartment that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: peace. The truth was out. My son knew who his mother really was, and I was free to focus on whatever came next. 6 months after I disappeared from my old life, I was building something better. The divorce had been finalized without me ever having to see Ashley face to face. Sarah Morrison handled everything through the courts, and Ashley's attorney quickly realized they had no leverage against the pile of evidence I'd provided. I kept the house, the business, and most of our assets. Ashley got her car, her personal belongings, and half of what was left after legal fees. She also got to explain to everyone in town why her husband of 23 years had vanished overnight. Barnes Security Solutions became my lifeline. Working with my hands, solving problems, helping people protect what mattered. It reminded me why I'd started this work in the first place. Word spread about my reliability and discretion, and soon I had more business than I could comfortably handle. The apartment above Martinez Electronics was never meant to be permanent, so I started looking for something more suitable. I found a small house on the outskirts of town with a detached garage I could turn into a proper workshop. It needed work, but I had the skills and the time to make it my own. Mason visited often. After seeing the evidence, he decided to cut ties with Ashley completely. "I can't respect someone who lies that easily," he told me one Saturday as we installed new security cameras around my property. "If she could lie to you for months about something that huge, what else has she lied about?" It was a fair question. We'd raised him with a strong sense of integrity, and Ashley's betrayal had shattered everything we'd taught him about honesty and commitment. Eventually, I started dating again, but slowly. There was a woman named Carol who ran the bookstore downtown. She was divorced too, understood the need to heal, and appreciated a man who knew how to fix things when they broke. "You don't talk much about your ex-wife," Carol said one evening after I'd repaired the lock on her back door. "Not much to say," I answered. "Sometimes people show you who they really are, and you have to decide if that's someone you want in your life." Carol nodded. She'd been through her own betrayal and understood the value of starting over. The best part of my new life was how simple it was. No more wondering where Ashley really was. No more dissecting every sentence, looking for hidden meanings. No more pretending to believe obvious lies. I worked. I spent time with my son. I got to know Carol better. And I built a life founded on honesty and respect instead of secrets and betrayal. Rick told me that Ashley eventually moved in with Dr. Lawson after his wife divorced him and took half his assets. Their affair became public when Lawson's wife hired her own private investigator. "She got what she wanted," Rick said. "But from what I hear, Lawson's not handling the divorce well. Lost his house, his kids won't talk to him, and the hospital's been asking questions about his behavior." I didn't feel any satisfaction hearing that. Their relationship had been built on cheating and lies. It was always going to fall apart. What mattered was that I'd gotten out before it dragged me down with it. 2 years after walking away from my marriage, I proposed to Carol in the same bookstore where we'd first really talked. She said yes without hesitation. And we planned a simple ceremony that matched who we were now, people who valued substance over show. The wedding was small, but it meant everything. Mason stood as my best man. Carol's daughter, Emma, was her maid of honor. We exchanged vows in the garden behind the bookstore. No fancy venue, no overpriced decorations. Just 2 people who had survived betrayal and learned what real partnership looked like. "Kevin Barnes," Carol said during her vows. You taught me that a man's words should mean something, and that love isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up every day and telling the truth. I'd never felt prouder to hear my name spoken. Barnes Security Solutions had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. I hired 2 employees, expanded into commercial consulting, and built a reputation as the guy who could solve problems other companies couldn't touch. The business gave me purpose, and the income gave Carol and me the freedom to shape our life exactly how we wanted it. We bought a house together, not the one Ashley and I had shared, but a craftsman-style place with good bones that needed some love. On weekends, Carol and I sanded floors, updated the kitchen, and installed a security system that could rival Fort Knox. Working side by side on a home that belonged to both of us felt like the exact opposite of what my first marriage had become. Mason finished college and moved back to town, taking a remote job with a tech company. He came over for dinner every Sunday, and we'd talk about his work, his girlfriend, his plans for the future. Ashley rarely came up, unless Mason mentioned her, and even that happened less and less. She moved again, he said one Sunday, while helping me put up motion sensors around her new rental. 3rd time since you left. I guess things didn't work out with the tire shop guy either. That's unfortunate, I said, and I meant it. I didn't want Ashley to be miserable. I just didn't want her chaos overlapping with my life anymore. She asked me to tell you that she understands now why you left the way you did, Mason added. Says she knows she broke something that couldn't be fixed. I nodded, but stayed quiet. Understanding was good, but it didn't change anything. I'd built a better life with a woman who actually shared my values, and nothing Ashley realized years later could change that or improve on it. Carol stepped out of the house carrying a tray of lemonade and homemade cookies, the kind of simple gesture that reminded me exactly why I'd fallen in love with her. She handed Mason a glass, then leaned down to kiss me on the cheek before sitting beside me on the porch steps. "What are you two scheming about out here?" Carol asked with a smile. "Just making sure no one gets past their defenses," I said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Good," she replied. "I like feeling safe." That night, lying next to Carol in our bed, I thought about how completely my life had changed. Instead of wondering where my partner was or what she was really doing, I knew exactly where Carol was, and I trusted, without a shadow of doubt, that she wanted to be there. Sometimes the best security system is simply choosing the right person to trust with the keys. 7 years after I vanished from Ashley's life, Mason called with news that changed everything. "Dad, I'm getting married," he said, excitement bursting through the phone. "Angela said yes. We're planning the wedding for next spring." I'd met Angela several times, a kind, smart nurse who made Mason laugh the way he used to as a kid. They'd been together 2 years, and it was obvious they were building something solid and real. "That's fantastic, son," I said. "Carol and I couldn't be happier for you both." "There's something else," Mason added, his tone shifting. "I need to ask you about the guest list. Angela thinks we should invite Mom. You know, for family unity and all that. But I wanted to talk to you first." I thought it through carefully. 7 years with no contact from Ashley. 7 years of building a life she had no share in. But this wasn't about me. This was Mason's day, and if he wanted both parents there, he deserved that. "It's your wedding, Mason," I said. "Invite whoever you want. I can handle being in the same room as your mother for a few hours." The wedding was beautiful. Mason and Angela exchanged vows at a country club outside town, surrounded by family and friends. Carol and I sat in the second row, dressed in our best, proud of the man Mason had become. Ashley was there too, several rows behind us, sitting with a man I didn't recognize. She looked older, thinner, and far less sure of herself than the woman I'd once been married to for 23 years. When our eyes met briefly during the ceremony, she gave a small, polite nod, but didn't try to come closer. During the reception, the photographer started arranging family portraits. Mason insisted on a picture with Carol and me together, both of us smiling wide, our arms around his shoulders. "You 3 look happy," the photographer said while adjusting his camera. "How long have you two been married?" 5 years, Carol answered, "but it feels like we've been together forever." Later that night, Mason posted the wedding photos on his social media. The shot of Carol, Mason, and me became his profile picture, 3 people who genuinely loved being around each other, captured in a moment of real joy. According to Mason, when Ashley saw the photo, she called him in tears. She'd assumed the wedding would be some kind of turning point, an opening for reconciliation, a chance to slip back into a family role she'd abandoned when I left. Instead, she saw her ex-husband and his new wife front and center in her son's life, while she sat with a stranger and realized she'd had almost nothing to do with the man Mason had become. She said seeing you with Carol made her realize what she threw away, Mason told me a few days later. But Dad, you looked happier than I can ever remember seeing you, like you finally found where you belong. He was right. 7 years after walking away from a marriage built on lies, I'd found something real with Carol. We'd grown Barnes Security Solutions into a thriving business, created a home full of laughter and trust, and become the kind of couple that made other people believe in love again. Ashley made her choice when she decided to betray our marriage. I made mine when I chose to disappear, instead of clinging to something that was already beyond repair. Looking at that wedding photo, Mason grinning, Carol's genuine smile, my own face relaxed and content, I knew I'd made the right call. Sometimes the strongest thing a man can do is walk away from what's destroying him and build something better. When Ashley came home that night 7 years ago, I was gone. All I'd left behind was an envelope, a photograph, and my wedding ring. At our son's wedding, she saw me again and finally understood that I'd never once looked back.